What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. I have a chaperone today. My wife is sitting on the couch because she knows Austin Matthews is my dear favorite player, and he did not skate this morning. So she's just sitting here to make sure if I need some emotional support. And also, we're keeping her out of the kitchen because we don't want to burn the house down during the show.
It's quite the intro.
Yeah. So what's going on? Before we get into today's slate, we need to talk about Tuesday's slate for a little bit. We had a couple of really, really big winners in our Discord. BB Mon, he is in our Discord. He won the $20 for $50,000 with looks like there you go. You have it. It's not a full Buffalo power play stack, but is four of them with Boehm Byram. He does have a SaberSim Avi, and that was a SaberSim thing. Most of the SaberSim MME players had the double Buffalo defenseman. Worked out great for him. $50,000 in the tank. Always nice to have that. And then in the 555, we had a stochastic avatar, Hicks, Hixx, take down the lineup for $200K. And by the way, BBMon won the 20 by 30.6 DK points, lapping the field. That's more than the full line goal's worth of points, 216 points. Hicks won the 555 with 179. For reference, didn't have any Sabres, which was actually surprising, but he had a full Islanders power play stack. McKinnon, Makar, Vitek Vanacek, and a one-off Matt Coronado. There's my miserable lineup, I think, on the left.
Yeah.
Yep. It's my awful lineup on the left. I did not cash, but it happens. Jake tells me that Hicks is a big stochastic player in NBA and NFL. But, those guys always hop on over when you can win six figures in NHL. Today, you can maybe win enough to fill up your tank with some premium. That's just how the streets go in NHL because there is NFL football here tonight. Not that affects the GPPs, but we're not here to dwell on that. We have a 12-game slate in front of us. Joining me, Cliffy. Definitely not a Dodgers hat. What's going on?
No, not a Dodgers hat. Not a whole lot. Just kind of excited for this 12-gamer. We were talking before the show. I know you're not a fan of most of the matchups. I kind of like this slate. It seems fairly wide open. Yes, there are obviously some smash spots Minnesota going into San Jose, New Jersey's at home to Montreal, Dallas at home to Chicago. There are some pretty big favorites, but I don't think those games are nearly as clear cut as they seem. And I do it's another one of those nights where I don't think that you'd necessarily have to chase after the chalk. So just kind of excited to break these 12 games down.
Yeah. Not too much news on this slate, which is nice. Especially when you're breaking down 12 games, you don't have to talk about too much news. So we should get into this. Frostback always has his work cut out for him. But yeah, let's get into the slate. Before we do, just wanted to say again, thank you guys for all the support via affiliate signups, liking the show, just showing up to the show, even talking shit, man. I'll take whatever I can get. I'm sure maybe Cliffy doesn't want the talking shit, but he does appreciate your support. If you're interested in going premium, you can click the link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. That will get you 15% off your first week or month. Let's get into the slate. 12 gamers. Let's start off with our favorite team in the history of NHL, Boston Bruins. They suck. Calgary Flames with a 2.6 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 3.4. They have one of the largest totals on the slate, 3.4. They moved Tyler Johnson to the top line, who they just signed off the couch, I think. I don't even know if he was in an organization.
Well, they had brought him in on like a PTO, like a tryout, and just were kind of holding him around until they signed him. Like it was one of those Pacioretty things. Like they were going to sign him eventually. It was just, when do they sign him?
Yeah, so they moved him to the top line with Pavel Zacha and David Pastrnak. I've said it, Cliffy said it, breaking up Lindholm Pastrnak was necessary. Pavel Zacha, David Pastrnak, at least per creation numbers last year, have been good. I don't know what Tyler Johnson brings to the table at this point in his career. I don't know. The second line is Lindholm, Brazeau, and Marchand. I don't have a ton of interest in that line. It would be the top line. Honestly, I'd probably just go for a Pastrnak one-off if I'm playing Bruins. Like, I'm sure Tyler Johnson's super cheap on both sites, but still, like, I have no faith that he's going to stay up there for the rest of the game because Montgomery has been mixing and matching and mixing and matching and matching and mixing and mixing and matching, and they can't get going. I mean, that's what happens when you have David Pastrnak and 15 third-liners, but at least with Zacha and Lindholm, Zacha and Pastrnak, you get a two-man that's correlated on the power play. It's a pretty good 5-on-5 spot. Like Pastrnak one-off is probably my favorite way to attack this, but I think, a two-man of Zacha Pastrnak is fine. You want to add in the power play quarterback, go for it. I don't really have much interest in the depth of Boston. Lindholm, Pastrnak, Marchand is in our top stacks right now at 19-1, and they're getting 10% projected ownership. I would imagine that goes up based on the total and the price discount you're getting with Zacha, Pastrnak, Tyler Johnson. We'll have to wait and see on a rerun, but as it stands, Pastrnak, Zacha for me. On the Calgary side, there's no ownership on Calgary. They were chalked the other night, and Matt Coronado had 2 goals at min price. I'm kind of interested in the Kadri Zari Kuzmenko line as a filler. They're only 12,900. I'm not saying I'm going to get to them in single entry, but like the Bruins are the most penalized team in the league. They haven't really shown that they can play any defense. Yes, Swayman has been better than the start of the season, but if you're going to give the other team 4 or 5 chances on the power play, I'll take some Kadri Kuzmenko Zari and at 0.5% projected ownership. They would definitely be in my MME mix in terms of filler lines. You want to go back on Coleman Coronado for even cheaper. Like I guess that's fine. I prefer Kadri Zari Kuzmenko, but my favorite in this game is some sort of Pastrnak one-off or pairing him with Zacha.
I mean, let's be honest here. The Bruins are giving up more goals per minute than the Flames are. That should probably kind of give you an indication of what kind of Boston team that we're dealing with here. Like the Flames are giving up the 6th fewest high danger chances against per 60 minutes, and the Bruins are kind of like in the middle of the league. Like you and I said it repeatedly. Like this Boston team they're not a beast defensively. The line that I do have a little bit of interest in is honestly that third line from Calgary, Sharangovich, Huberdeau, and Pospisil. The reason is you get Sharangovich and Huberdeau both on the top power play unit. Huberdeau and Pospisil have played fine together so far this season. A lot of that time was with Anthony Mantha. Anthony Mantha is now hurt. But, that line's 11.1K. They're probably going to miss Charlie McAvoy for most of the game. I'm going to assume because I assume they leave McAvoy either up against the Coleman line or the Kadri line as often as possible. So I don't mind Calgary 3 here. They're not somebody I'm targeting. If I was 20 maxing, if I was 150 maxing, something like that, I would certainly have a little bit of interest in them. It's basically the only real interesting thing for me on the Calgary side other than one-offs because they are cheap. Because the Bruins do take a ton of penalties, as you mentioned. Boston's at 4.5 times shorthanded per game this season. Only 2 other teams are above 4, and no other teams above 4.1. So, they are well out in the lead for taking penalties per game. Not like Calgary's power play is a lead or anything, but, you give any team 5 power play chances. there's a decent chance that they score at least once. So Sharon Govich, Huberdeau, Pospisil for me. On the Boston side, like I'm kind of laughing at the fact that I actually do have to think about what to do with Tyler Johnson. Like, I didn't think we'd ever have to like kind of think about that guy again, but once upon a time, like he was a good offensive player. He just hasn't been that kind of decent offensive player for a while. Like there's a reason why he was brought into Boston on a PTO and wasn't signed by any other team, is because he wasn't really worth signing. And it's nothing like necessarily injury related, like Max Pacioretty blowing his Achilles out twice, and you wonder if it's going to happen a third time. This guy's just, Tyler Johnson's just straight up been declining. Like for the price, I think the Boston top line is playable because Johnson, Zacha, Pasternak is 15,100, and it's still a 3.4 total at home. With David Pasternak line at 15,100 on DK. Like that's not that, like that's fine, because you don't need, if you can get an assist and a couple shots from Johnson, if you can get maybe like 2 assists or like a goal and 3 shots from Zacha or something, like anything like that, then you're probably in business. You don't need a lot. That's the reason why I have some interest in Boston 1. It's not that I think it's going to be a good line or anything, but any David Pasternak line that's at 15,100, I think is very much worth considering. But even at that price, they're not at the top of the priority list for me. I think generally speaking, I have one-off interest in this game. One-off Sharon Govich, Kadri, we always say is always in play. Certainly David Pasternak. I do think there are playable stacks. I don't think that there's anything that I'm going to target specifically in single entry.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to attack. Like, I don't know, man. Like Tyler Johnson had a 90-point season, but I think that was like 13 years ago. Like, I don't even think that was with the triplets line, right? With Tampa?
He had 170-point season. He had a bunch of like 20-goal, 50-point seasons. Sure. Like he was a solid offensive player, but that was 7-8 years ago. This guy's 34, 35 years old or something. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah, let's go from this game to another lovely evening at the rink. New York Islanders with a 2.8 total. Heading into Ottawa, the Senators have a 3.2. This game's actually interesting. There are multiple lines that you can attack in this game. Ottawa going Tkachuk, Stützle, Grieg, Batherson, Norris, Giroux, Perron, and Pinto skated with the team. They're not in tonight, but they are. I think Perron was out for personal reasons. Pinto was hurt. They're both not in tonight, but they will be back shortly. Islanders going Horvat, Lee, JG Pajot, Nelson, Palmieri, Sipelkov. I'll start with the Islanders. I don't have a ton of interest in the Horvat, Lee, Pajot line. I know they did some good things the other night, but it was on the power play. Again, they are fully correlated, and that kind of makes it annoying. But they're 14-3, 2.7% top 2 stack, 6.4% projected ownership. They just, at 5-on-5, like, they just aren't creating enough for me to play them in single entry. If you want to go back to them because they're fully correlated on the power play at 14-3, be my guest. They're also going to be going up against Tkachuk, Stützle, Grieg, who have been very good together. And they have double the top 2 stack and a third of the ownership. Yes, they're 3,500 more, but I do like that matchup in favor of Ottawa. Our boy Artem Zub is back. Is Hamonic still on the top pair? I shudder to ask.
Yeah, they're scratching Jacob Bernard Docker instead.
Well, lovely. But I still prefer Stützle, Tkachuk, Grieg in this matchup. That would be the Ottawa line that
I think I saw Zub on the top pair. So I don't think Hamonic's there anymore anyway. But yes, Jacob Bernard Docker.
Yeah. Like, if it is Sanderson, Zub, that's another reason to be off of Islanders' top line. Like, not that they're going to be, like, super elite shutdown, but like Stützle, Tkachuk, Greek are a good line, both ends of the ice. You take Hamonic off that top pair, you could put a microphone with Jake Sanderson, and it'd be an upgrade to Travis Hamonic. So I'm out on the Islanders one. If you want to play them in MME for the power play correlation, be my guest. I'm more interested in the Islanders second line, Nelson, Palmieri, Sipelkoff. They're fully correlated on the second unit. They're $300 more expensive than Islanders top line, same top two stack, 5.2% projected ownership. They just have a longer sample of being better. And you avoid the top pair for Ottawa. You avoid Stützle, Tkachuk. You get Norris, Batherson, Drew, who honestly are better than I thought they would be together. But Nelson, Palmieri have been the best duo for the Islanders this season outside of like a couple games when Horvat and Barzal were doing the thing. They play good minutes. They're fully correlated on the second unit. If I had to play an Islanders line, it would be that second one. On the Ottawa side, it would be that top line. Tkachuk, Stützle, Grieg. If you want to go to the second line, Norris, Batherson, Giroux, because they're cheaper, that's fine. But I prefer Ottawa one here.
Yeah. I will also say, like, I don't have a ton of interest in Horvat, Lee, Pajot. Like, the thing is like, even if they don't create a ton, like, I think their high nature shots together, it's like a little bit above league average. So they're a little bit better than league average, which isn't great. But if you're a little bit better than league average and you play 20 to 22 minutes, like, it's that San Jose thing, right? It's like, the Michael Granlund line isn't necessarily great, but the fact that he plays like 22 minutes a night matters. It's kind of the same thing with the Islanders top line. I would have interest in them, except the Islanders, since Barzal got hurt, have kind of focused mainly on shifting their ice time towards the top six. Like, I'm pretty sure in both their games without Barzal, every single forward in the top six has played at least 16 minutes in each game, and most of them have played like 17 to 22 minutes. Like, this was a team that wasn't shy about giving its third line minutes. And I think given the injury and the fact that they're fairly top heavy now, that you're going to see like something like Colorado does in a way, although not to that extreme, where like the top six eats a ton of minutes and the bottom six barely gets anything. I think that's going to be the case with the Islanders. So that's why I kind of like Nelson, Palmieri, and Sipelkoff. Like, Artem Zub coming back does matter. He is arguably the best defensive defenseman that Ottawa has. Maybe you want to make an argument for Sanderson or Jensen or something. Like, I'm not going to say no, but it is a huge upgrade for them. And you're right. Like, I don't want to go necessarily into that pairing, especially as Clayton asked in chat, is Ottawa taking fewer penalties this year? Like, yeah, they are. Like, they're amongst the bottom 10 teams by time shorthanded per game this season. The penalty kill itself isn't great, but they're not taking a ton of penalties. I agree with you on Islanders too. Like, they have been creating well, 14.7 high danger shots per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That's about 25% higher than the league average, give or take. They do get minutes. Nelson has been pretty good this season. I think pretty underrated. They are perfectly correlated on the power play. Islanders too, if anything, I have a little bit of interest in them. I haven't made my lineup yet. So we'll see what happens, but you do get to avoid that Zub-Sanderson pairing, which I think is a good thing. On the Ottawa side, honestly, I would probably go to the top line. I think both Ottawa's first and second lines are perfectly fine. Tkachuk, Stützle, Grieg, Batherson, Norris, Giroux, both of them are perfectly fine. Tkachuk, Stützle, Grieg, like, Grieg will never get that expensive because he's not a big shooter, but it's like David Pastrnak when we said, like, it's a Pastrnak line for 15,100. This is still a Stützle and Tkachuk line for under 18K. That's a pretty good price. And it's not Ilya Sorokin starting for the Islanders tonight. It's Semyon Varlamov, and Varlamov has not been good to start this season. He has generally been good these last few years, but he's also at that age where things can fall off pretty quickly for a goaltender. Like, the guy, I think he turns 37 years old this season. As a 38-year-old, I can only imagine how it feels to play in the NHL at this age. I do have a little bit of interest in the Ottawa top line. The Islanders don't take a ton of penalties. the Ottawa is feasting on the power play, but the Islanders' penalty kill has not been good, and especially with Varlamov, kind of playing the way he is. I do have some interest in Ottawa 1 here tonight. So Ottawa 1, Islanders 2 for me out of this game.
Same page through 2 games. Nashville Predators with a 2.6 total heading into Florida. The Panthers have a 3.5. Florida is back after winning both games in Finland. Half the roster is like Finnish. So, that's not really surprising. But I don't really worry too much about a European hangover. It's basically like for them flying to Seattle. So,
I mean, they've had 5 days off.
Yeah. And usually, because I fly to California a bunch, flying out west isn't bad. Flying back east is miserable. And coming back to Florida from Finland, you're going west. So it was probably worse on the way there, getting used to the time.
There's the time zone touting we haven't had in a couple seasons.
Yeah, we need to bring that back. Time zone touting. Tip your waitress. Florida going Reinhart, Barkov, Rodriguez, Tkachuk, Bennett, Verhaeghe, Lundell, E2D2, Luosterainen, and Jesper Boqvist. Nashville played last night. They lost to Washington. They did mix up their lines before the game. It's Forsberg, Stamkos, Riley, Marchessault, Nyquist. Excuse me. It was supposed to be Novak, but he got scratched after lock for Luke Evangelista. I don't know if it was injury related or
they said Novak was hurt, and then Sissons got hurt during the game. So
yeah, this is one of those spots where it's, if you're interested in playing Nashville, there's some news. I'm not interested in playing Nashville. Not only are they back-to-back on the road, that top line, if it is Forsberg, Stamkos, O'Reilly, gonna match up with the buzzsaw of Barkov, Rodriguez, Reinhart. I'm not interested in that. I don't have a ton of interest in the Nashville depth because they mix up their lines all the time. And like last year, I would say Marchessault one-off would be fine because he's on the top power play and the Panthers were taking a ton of penalties. The Panthers just aren't taking a lot of penalties anymore, and they still have a very good penalty kill. So I'm out on Nashville. What to do on the Florida side is more interesting. I think you can make a case for both of the top 6 lines. Now, Tkachuk, Bennett, Verhaeghe is 21,000. That's very expensive, but they do have a much bigger top 2 percentage than the top line, and then it's 10.2% with 4% projected ownership. If you want to go to them, that's fine. I'm leaning a bit more towards Reinhart, Barkov, Rodriguez at 18,500. I think you can just straight up power play stack the Panthers here tonight. I didn't watch a ton of the game yesterday, but I did notice that Washington did get a plethora of power plays, and it was Saros in net. Tonight, you're probably going to see Wedgwood, who is a pretty big drop-off. So I don't think there's a wrong answer in terms of which Florida line you want to go to. I even think Florida 3 is in play if you need a filler. But, based off your builds, I think the top 6 or the top 2 lines are in play.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you on Reinhart, Barkov, Rodriguez. One thing is they're so much cheaper, right? 2,600 is a pretty big savings. You're basically between a punt defenseman or getting up to Miro Heiskanen or Mikhail Sergachev or something like that. That matters. They do get quite a bit of ice time, and the ice times thing I think is something that's kind of important to mention here. Matthew Tkachuk, he was sick and he missed some games, but he's played 8 games this season and he's averaging 17 and a half minutes per game. 2 years ago, he was at 20 and a half minutes. Not surprisingly, his shot volume has also dropped. He's gone from about 3.5 shots per game to 3. Paying $21K for a line where the best player might only play 17 to 18 minutes, that doesn't seem like the right play to me. That's why I'm going with Reinhart, Barkov, Rodriguez. They have been really good over the last couple seasons. 13 high danger shots for, 8.5 against per 60, just kind of throttling the competition. Reinhart and Barkov are probably going to play over 20 minutes. 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. They're coming in with positive leverage. They're cheap. They're moderately expensive at 18.5, but they're still cheap enough where you can fit in a good secondary stack or get in a high-priced defenseman, like whatever you want to do. So I think it's Reinhart, Barkov, Rodriguez. I think both Florida top 2 lines are perfectly fine. I'm just thinking about the way that I'm probably building my lineup tonight, and I would just go with the cheaper option. Nothing for me from the Nashville side. Like, if it is O'Reilly, Forsberg, Stamkos, like that line is fine, but you're right. It is a bad matchup against that Barkov line. Florida's taking a lot fewer penalties this season than they were last season, and the penalty kill is just as good. So it's going to be tough for Nashville to get there on the power play. They haven't been scoring at even strength. That's going to turn around eventually. I don't know if it's going to be back-to-back on the road against the Barkov line. So, especially where that Nashville line, if they are together, they're 19-1. There are other spots on the slate that we'll talk about later. Winnipeg, Rangers, Devils, Minnesota, that I think in that price range where I'd rather go. So nothing for me from the Nashville side.
Montreal Canadiens with a 2.5 total heading into the Rock in Newark, New Jersey. The Devils have a whopping 4 total. Devils going Hischier, Meyer, Mercer, Hughes, Bratt, Palat, and then Stefan Nason, Haula, Cotter. Montreal going Caulfield, Suzuki, Doc, Slavkovsky, Newhook, Jake Evans. I don't have a lot of interest in Montreal here at all. It's not a good power play matchup. It's not a good 5-on-5 matchup. If you get to some Montreal 1 in your 150 lineups, that's fine, but I don't particularly love this matchup at all for Montreal. I'm out on them in single entry. I think, 20 lineups, having 1 of 20 is fine. Obviously, if you have 150, you can have a little bit. But, there's 17-1 and both of the Devils lines in better matchups are cheaper. So I'm out on the Canadiens. The Devils side is interesting because Hughes, Bratt, Palat, 16,300, 11.1% top 2 stack, 20.1% projected ownership. That is a lot. That's like Islanders 1 from the other night. It's the same size slate. Now, the difference between the Islanders on Tuesday and the Devils tonight is I would say Jack Hughes is a little bit better player than anyone on the Islanders. Still, that ownership is a bit aggressive for my taste. Now, I think there's a couple ways you can attack that if you are very much gung-ho on playing the Devils here tonight. I think you can leave Palat off and put Stefan Nason. I think you can full on power play stack. You can leave Palat off and go Nico Hischier, Hughes, Bratt. They'll get you on a little bit unique path. All those guys might be 10% plus. If you say you go Hischier, Hughes, Bratt, right? You're going to see Hughes at like 20%. You'll see Bratt at 17%. You'll see Nico Hischier at 11%, something like that. Just because all 3 of those guys are chalky doesn't mean that 3-man stack in itself is chalky. So I think, doing some sort of power play stack is a way to get a little bit different in a high ownership game. If you want to just go straight up Hischier, Meyer, Mercer, that's fine, but the issue I'm running into there is only Nico Hischier is on the top power play unit. Now, it's a great 5-on-5 matchup because Montreal is honestly the worst 5-on-5 team in the league, but it is also an elite power play matchup, and I want as many power play guys as I can get in.
Yeah, I also don't have a lot of interest in Montreal. I will also say they didn't run morning skate lines, and after completely choking that game on Tuesday, I wouldn't be surprised to see the lines blowing up at warm-up. So just keep an eye on that if you are playing the Habs. But yeah, Montreal won. Like, the Doc line has been Doc, Caulfield, Suzuki. Like, they've been fine together. I just agree with you where it's a pretty bad power play matchup because New Jersey's below average by time shorthanded per game. The penalty kill is really, really good, so on and so forth. I just don't have a lot of interest in Montreal for single entry here tonight. It is the Devil side that I do have more interest in. You're right about the ownership. 20% on the Hughes line, nearly 10% on that Hischier line. But I also agree with you that I think you kind of want to focus on the power play guys here because Montreal's penalty kill has started to fall apart. Montreal's penalty kill was actually pretty good through the first couple weeks of the season. Now they've given up 7 power play goals against in the last 8 games. That'll kind of happen. Like they're taking a lot of penalties this season as well. Tied for 7th for most power play opportunities given up per game this season. And the Devils' power play, like I think it's been a while since we talked about it, but with Stefan Noesen on the top line, their shots per minute on the power play has gone up something like 20%. Like it's a lot. So and the goals have gone up, obviously. Like their shot rate and their goal rate with Noesen is elite. Like high, like we're talking like if Edmonton was going the way that they normally are in Tampa Bay and all that, they would be right up there with those teams. So yeah, I agree with you doing like a double center, like Hughes, Hischier plus Bratt, just 5-man stacking the power play. I know it's a 12-game slate, but this is certainly a game where the Devils could just blow the doors off like 6-1 or something like that. So I would focus on the power play guys for the Devils. If I were to play an even strength line, it would probably honestly be Hischier, Meyer, and Mercer, just because I do think they have played a little bit better. Jack Hughes has been shooting more lately, but he's still not shooting like he normally is, and I find that a little bit concerning. But I just really like the power play matchup for the Devils here tonight. So, Hischier, Hughes, Bratt, Noesen, some mix of those guys, I think is the way that I would attack this game.
Yeah, and normally I don't like power play stacking across 3 even strength lines on any size slate, but like Noesen is cheap and he's an integral part of that power play. He's just not like a guy who just is there because he's cheap and you play him because he's cheap. Like he is involved heavily on the power play. So yeah, I think power play stack is fine. Does the power play second unit get enough time to be relevant? I don't think so. Like Devils are one of those teams. Yeah. They kind of pump that first unit.
It's like a 70-30, 75-25 split. I mean, it's still some ice time. If they get 4 power plays, it's still like a minute and a half of ice time. That's not nothing, but it's not a lot.
Buffalo Sabres with a 2.6 total heading into Madison Square Garden. The Rangers have a 3.5. This game is annoying me for DFS purposes. Tage Thompson, Tuck Paterka coming off an excellent performance the other night. They're 19-4 now, and they're going to get a nice date with Igor Shesterkin. That takes me to MME only. Like you can talk about the Rangers' lack of defensive play, and they don't have much once you get past the Fox pairing. But like Igor has been Igor. And so like I don't want to rely on a line going against Igor on a 12-game slate.
Yeah, I was just to cut you off for a second. I was looking earlier. I think the Rangers lead the NHL in team save percentage at like 934, 935 or something like that, and no other team's above 920. It's like it's not even close.
I think who was it? Was it Meek? No, I forget who it was, but they had that like chart, and the top left was plus offense minus defense. And like the Rangers were in the top left quadrant, the only team there. They're like really good on offense and miserable on defense. Igor absolutely just bailing them out. I guess like Buffalo 1 is fine in MME, especially if you're making over 20 lineups. It's just like a price thing, Igor thing, 19-4 on the road with a 2.6 total isn't super interesting.
Also, they're the line that's going to run into the Adam Fox pair is kind of the issue too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's the only pair they have really. At least defensively. And then, that second line doesn't really interest me too much. Zucker, McLeod, Greenway, I guess you can kind of throw in the filler bin if you're looking to do something really expensive. But again, there are other cheap lines. There's one in this game that I prefer, but it would be the Buffalo third line over the second line if you're getting a little bit spicy in MME. The Rangers side is a little bit more interesting to me. I don't particularly love these lines. I know they're trying to get Mika going, but putting him with Panarin and Lafreniere and then cutting their ice time is not going to do it. Mika and Panarin have never played well together. over any season they've played together. It's not just like, oh, this season they have a bad sample. Anytime they've been together since Panarin has gotten to the Rangers, they've been bad. And they've cut Panarin's 5-on-5 time by almost 2 minutes since they've gone to these new lines. At 19-7, I'm probably going elsewhere. Trocheck, Smith, Cooley is interesting at 13-6. Like, Trocheck is their best center. Riley Smith is a good player. Will Cooley's kind of like a Tasmanian devil. He just needs to stay on sides. I don't mind that line at 13-6. I think they're an interesting filler line because you do get Trocheck on the top power play. The Rangers' third line is also interesting to me. Hedl, Kakko, Kreider. I think, Hedl and Kakko have played very well together. Kreider might actually drag that line down a little bit, the way he plays. But I don't mind them at 12-2. Like, I would much prefer the Rangers' depth, the Buffalo depth in this game. But I don't really love this game, despite the Rangers having a massive total.
Yeah, so I just want to correct something I just said. I said that the Buffalo top line might be running in the Adam Fox pair. I looked at the Rangers game against Ottawa. They were sending out Jacob Trouba pretty much exclusively against the Kachuk-Stutzla line.
Lavalette is – I don't know what Trouba has on the org. Well, we know kind of the story there, but, like, Trouba's awful. Nice guy. Terrible hockey player.
Yes. Nice guy, tries hard. I that's not a bad matchup for Buffalo. It's just one of those things, like, if Igor doesn't have a 920 or higher save percentage tonight, I think Buffalo can have a good night. And there are going to be games, even Igor could have one of the best seasons in NHL history for a goaltender and still have bad games this year, right? Like, I'm just looking back to his game log from a few years ago when he had that 936 save percentage or whatever it was. Like 15% of his starts still resulted in 4 goals or more against, right? So, like, if this was a smaller slate, if this was like 7 games or something, that's the thing. Is like if this was a 6, 7, maybe even like an 8-game slate, I would be giving consideration to Buffalo 1 because this is not a tough matchup for them. It's just there are a ton of teams to pick from here tonight. We talked about that Nashville line being 19-1. This line is 19-4. I think there are other lines in the 19 to 21K range that I would rather play. I just think that Buffalo top line has actually been pretty good this season. 17.3 high danger shots 13.7. I mixed those numbers up. High danger shots per 60. Pretty good defensively. They play a lot of minutes. Like, Peterka's been getting close to 20 minutes at times. Thompson's certainly been getting over 20 minutes often. I don't think it's a bad matchup for them. It's just, is this going to be a night where Igor has an 880 save percentage or 980? Because if it's 980, then they're toast. But if it's 880, they can fill the net because the Rangers are not a good defensive team. But I just think there are other lines and other spots that I would rather play. On the Rangers side, like, these lines.
Oh, they're atrocious.
They're killing me. The Buffalo PK has not been very good this year. So I think I would treat the Sabres like I would treat Montreal and treat the Rangers like I would treat the Devils. And that's focus on the power play guys. Panarin and Trocheck. Like, if you want to throw Lafreniere in there because he probably will lead them in even strength ice time and he is good with Panarin, I think that's fine. They are expensive, but I don't think it's a bad matchup for them. Again, because that Sabres penalty kill has really just been that good this season. The Rangers power plays amongst the best, if not the best in the NHL, especially with the way the Oilers are playing. So Panarin's advantage at Lafreniere. If you want to take out Lafreniere and put in Trocheck, like Trocheck's been playing 20 minutes, even with the new line combinations, so there's another double center stack that we can try out. I would focus on the power play guys on the Rangers. I do think it's a good matchup for them. But again, I just think that there might be other spots on this slate where I would go for my, $19,000 to $21,000 line.
Yeah. Please break up these lines. Pittsburgh Penguins. They 2.6 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.9 grande total there for the Hurricanes. No one's playing Pittsburgh 1. Don't blame them. They're 20,100 on the road going up against the Jordan Staal line. No, thank you. If you happen to get one of 150 in here, if you one in MME, sure, fine. Be my guest. I'm out on Pittsburgh in single entry. Just a matter of what you want to do with Carolina. I think the Carolina side is pretty interesting here. Since Stahl's going out against Crosby, Malkin, Raquel, which isn't a great defensive line anyway, but like after that, there just isn't a line combination that goes, I don't want to play the Hurricanes. Pittsburgh has a pretty decent penalty kill, and I think for that reason, I'd probably just full stack the top line. Aho, Svechnikov, Roslovic. I wish Roslovic's ice time was better, but they're in that 19,000 range that we just talked about. I'd much rather play Carolina 1 here than the Rangers top line, than the Buffalo top line for sure. Roslovic's minutes are a bit concerning. What can you do, right? Maybe you leave him off and you add in a defenseman. I think the second line's okay. Like, no one loves October and November better than Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and no one loves disappearing in the months after that than Jesperi Kotkaniemi. But like a Netchus one-off is fine. I think Kotkaniemi, Netchus two-man's fine. I also don't even mind like a Stahl Jarvis two-man, but it would be Carolina 1 for me.
Yeah, I do like Carolina 1 here as well. As you mentioned, they've been pretty good this season. I was looking at their 20.1 high danger shots per 60 so far this season. That's something like 80% higher than the league average. It is preposterous how much that they're generating at 5-on-5. The big problem, Roslovic has been shooting. We talked about that on the last show. Svechnikov has been shooting a ton. The big problem has been Sebastian Aho. He's shooting 8.1%, and this is a guy that shot at least 16% in 4 straight seasons. So, like, it's clearly just hit a bad little skid here. And he's averaging like 3.5 shots per game, which is, this is not a guy that typically averages that many shots. This is a guy that's about, 3, if not a little less than that. So he's been shooting with a lot of volume as well. I think it's actually a tougher matchup for them going up against the Pittsburgh Middle Six, because I think the Pittsburgh Middle Six could actually be fine defensively, if not low event. But they have just been so good this year that they are one of those 19K-ish lines that I would consider. The other line I'm considering in this game is that Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook line, because they are filler priced. So, if you're going to play an expensive Minnesota stack, expensive Colorado, Tampa Bay, even though they're not that bad, depends if you had Hedman or not, like those types of things. Like that Carolina third line, Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook, only 0.6% top 2 stack, but they're only 11,100. And they're going to go out against that Crosby line. And the Crosby line has been good offensively, but I don't think this is going to surprise anybody, but they've been below average defensively. And because they're going to be matched up against them, I think, that Pittsburgh line is going to play a ton. So I think that Stahl line could actually get, a decent amount of minutes here tonight. Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook is one of the filler lines I would consider if you need like a sub 12K line here tonight. But it is Carolina 1 I like best, and I agree with you. Nothing for me from the Pittsburgh side.
Yeah. Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.6 total heading into Tampa Bay. The Lightning have a 3.5. Braden Point still out. Tampa Bay flip-flop Gensel and Hagel, which is a choice, I guess. It's not really that big of a deal, but Hagel and Cirelli have played excellent together this season. The Flyers are healthy scratching Mitchkov, part of the process. I don't know what the whole city of Philly is under the trust the process, and they haven't won a goddamn thing in a long time. Anyway, they're going Konechny, Tippett, Frost, Couturier, Forrester, and Anthony Richards, right? He's in the lineup on the top power play, I would assume. Kucherov, Cirelli, Gensel is pretty expensive. Gensel and Kucherov have been pretty good this year, but all of that has come with Point. The thing is, like, the Flyers are bad, specifically in the net, which is important in this matchup. I was hoping it would still be Hagel, Cirelli, Kucherov, because I'd have a lot more interest. Like, Gensel's more expensive than Hagel, and he just hasn't been shooting as much. They're fine in this matchup. Like, I think there's other lines in that price range that I just prefer more, is what I'm getting at. So if you want to play them, I think that's fine. Especially because Kozlov, I think his name is in that, and we don't know if he's NHL.
He might not even be playing. He got hurt in morning skate. I haven't seen an official update, but it looks like it's going to be Fedotov starting with an emergency backup goalie, which means Fedotov's going to stay in whether he lets in 1 goal or 10.
Yeah, that's the reason to play Tampa, right? So, like, the top line's fine. I wish it was Cirelli, Hagel, Kucherov. The second line's interesting. Paul, Hagel, Mitchell, Chaffee. Again, like I said on Tuesday, just a random assortment of players. It would be that Tampa top line. The Flyers top line is interesting to me, too, at 16-8. They're fully correlated. Frost, Tippett, Konechny. They broke up Hagel, Cirelli, which have been very good at both ends of the ice. I don't know what Cirelli, Kucherov, and Gensel are going to be defensively, but when Paul was there, they weren't very good. Maybe Cirelli's a little bit better, but I kind of like that Konechny, Tippett, Frost line at 16-8, fully correlated. Tampa's not a good defensive team. They haven't been in a while. While Tampa 1 is my favorite line in this game, I think at 16-8, that Flyers top line deserves some attention.
Yeah, I'll get to the question in chat from Corey about the Flyers defense, because they were a pretty good defensive team last year. So far this year, they are 23rd in the league by high danger shots against per 60. They're worse than teams like St. Louis, Buffalo, and Detroit. So, no, they have not been good defensively. I think part of it is just the blue line. Like, they ran back the same blue line, added Eric Johnson, and said, let's see how this goes. Not going well. With Cam York out, it's basically up to Travis. It's Travis Sanheim and the boys. Like, that's just pretty much it on defense for Philly. That's why I kind of like Tampa here. Is like, Philly has not been good defensively at 5-on-5. Fedotov, like, to say he's been bad would be kind of an understatement. Like, he got lit up in his, 2 starts and a relief appearance, something like that. 14 goals against in 3 games, 14 goals against in 157 minutes. Like a goal like every 11 minutes or something like that. That's pretty bad. And if you go back to last year, he gave up 10 goals in 121 minutes. So at this point, he's at 24 goals against in 280 minutes. That's honestly, it's like
that's not even 5
goals a game. Like, it's I all I can think of is Ray Rock when he's been in chat saying Fedotov is not an NHL goalie, and I'll tell you what, in his limited showing so far in the NHL, he has not been an NHL goalie. That's why I kind of like Tampa here tonight. I do think the Lightning have the best goaltending matchup in the league, and the Flyers have not been good defensively besides that. Kucherov, Gensel, and Cirelli, they are expensive, but we just listed an 11K line that we do like. There are cheap lines elsewhere on the slate that we can talk about. Like, we'll get to Chicago a little bit later. Honestly, I don't think Chicago's in that bad of a spot. San Jose, that second line, Winnipeg depth, Los Angeles, like, there are some cheap lines that you can go to. I'm not worried. The only matchup that I would be kind of worried about is on the penalty kill, because the Flyers penalty kill, it's not been terrible this season, but it hasn't been, quite as good as it was last year. And the Flyers, we talk about taking penalties. The Flyers are taking the 7th most penalties in the league. So even without Braden Point, I really like Tampa's top line here. I think they're in a really, really good spot. 19.8% top two stack, 8.8% ownership. They are even at 21.8. They are a line that I'm very much considering playing here tonight because I just think they're in a really good matchup. On the Philly side, I don't hate the line of Tippett, Couturier, and Konechny. And I do think I don't think Tampa is really a tough matchup for Philly. Like, certainly not the matchup that it was last year. Like, the Flyers, 21st in the Lightning, 16th in the league by high danger shots against per 60, 23rd by goals against. Like, Tampa is giving up more goals per minute than the Chicago Blackhawks. So, like, it's going to be tough to full stack because I don't have any faith in Tortorella leaving any of his lines together for longer than 10 minutes. But certainly a Konechny one-off, a Tippett one-off, like things like that. I do think there is some good value on Philly side. I think there's stuff to like on both sides of this game.
Yeah, and if you're worried about the price of Tampa, just one-off Kucherov, man. Like,
yeah, that's perfectly fine as well. He's probably one of the. I actually didn't check projections. Yeah, number one winger, number two skater on the slate behind Nathan McKinnon. So,
yeah. Our first This Game Sucks of the evening. Utah Soakers with a 2.8 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 2.8 total. Dylan Holloway is a game time decision. He's trending towards playing. He took a puck like off the throat, right? I think it I don't want to conjecture, but I think he had some breathing issues. I think that was the issue for him going to the hospital. It wasn't like it crushed a disc in his neck or something like that. So if he's good to go, he'll probably have one of those little throat guards. I don't have a ton of interest in this game. If you check in on the narrative street, Clayton Keller is from St. Louis. He's going to have a bunch of family in the arena. That would be the line I would go to for Utah anyway. Keller, Genther, Cooley at 17,000. The Blues don't have any defensive lines that worry me. I just don't like these Utah lines. There are combinations on this team that would be so much better for DFS. The coach just hates DFS. That's what I'm going with. It would be Keller and Genther and Cooley. You get two of the three guys on the top power play unit. The Blues penalty kill sucks. They don't take a ton of penalties, but it would be Utah one. The depth, if it was Bukestad, Krause, Michelli, much more interest, but Kerfoot doesn't really do too much for me. It would be that top Utah line. On the Blues side, it would be Kyrou, Shen, and Saad. But man, that just feels bad. But again, Kyrou's their best player. Shen just plays a ton of minutes. Saad has been steady pretty much since 1903. It would be the Genther line and it would be the Shen one. But this game honestly sucks.
Yeah, the thing with I agree with you on Kyrou, Shen, and Saad. That probably would be the line I would go to. I was looking at the tracking data so far this season, entries and exits and stuff like that. And Jordan Kyrou's been really, really good. Just that no one else in St. Louis has been, especially with Robert Thomas hurt. And at 14,200, I just think there are other spots that I'd rather go. Like we talked about the Islanders earlier. I'd rather play that Islanders second line going into Ottawa than that St. Louis second line. You talked about that Ryan McLeod line from Buffalo. I think they're even cheaper than that, but I think that, they're in play. Carolina is that third line. I just think there are other spots I would rather go to. I think a Jordan Kyrou one-off would make the most sense for me from the St. Louis side. On the Utah side, I have interest in both their top lines. I think this might be an instance where I would dip down to Schmaltz and Michelli, and it's just for this reason, is that St. Louis is at home. Parayko is going to be sent out pretty much exclusively against the Keller line, or as much as they can. And the rest of the St. Louis blue line is fairly injured or shitty. So, if I could avoid Colton Parayko at 5-on-5, get Schmaltz, Hayton, and Michelli, and that line, not a big sample yet, little under 50 minutes, but They have been outplaying the opposition. They've been above average offensively. You still get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. I think Schmal, Tatum, and Michelli would be another one of those, like, not quite point units, but a keeper one that I would like to monitor tonight. And we just got a dog bark for him, so.
You get the dog bark of approval. I have no idea what they're barking at. I'm sure a leaf blew the wrong way. Oh, there's someone at the door, I think. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.8 total heading into Dallas. The Stars have a 3.8 total. Just give me 1 second here. The King Bacon Pie is fired up right now. I'm going to kick it to Cliffy for a second. Let them calm down. I'm upset about the dogs. What do you want to do about the dogs? You want to come babysit them, Walgreen? Come babysit them.
Chicago going into Dallas. Chicago playing a back-to-back. They lost last night 4-1 at home against Detroit. No official certainty on what the Chicago lineups are going to do, what the Chicago lineup is going to look like, but I don't think I don't even know what they can change really at this point. Dallas, this is interesting because Dallas does have a huge total. As I was mentioning earlier, Chicago has actually been giving up fewer goals per minute than teams like Boston, Tampa Bay, and Buffalo, and Nashville, and Utah. It's close, but they're basically in that range so far this season. I was talking to, Mason Marchment's out for Dallas. Nils Lundqvist is coming in for Brendan Smith on the blue line. I was talking to you earlier today in Discord in our private chat about Jason Robertson. Now, he had off-season surgery on his ankle, on his foot, ankle. It didn't seem like it would be anything serious, but I was looking at his skating metrics on NHL Edge, and he's not a great skater anyway. He's generally a guy that uses skill and size to kind of create offensively. But his skating metrics are literally at the bottom of the league for every single forward. Absolutely at the bottom of the league for top speed, for speed bursts, like those types of things. It's kind of concerning that a guy that, missed all of training camp because of a late foot surgery, ankle surgery, whatever it was, is now at the very bottom of the league by every skating metric that the NHL has. Like, that is concerning for me. And another thing I was talking to you about was Matt Dumba. Like, the offense just disappears when he's on the ice. He just can't help them move the puck.
The Elias Lindholm of the Stars.
Basically. And that's not a great thing. I think the one thing I would have interest in on the Dallas side is Johnson, Stankov, and Ben. They're coming in with a ton of ownership, 17.3%, 4.9 top 2 stack percentage. It's a lot of ownership, but it is a pretty good matchup. I do think it's their best line. None of the Dallas lines have really been great this season, except for the Marchment, Sega, and Duchesne line. And Marchment's out tonight. They have Sam Steele there instead. So, I don't know, man. I know Dallas has a big total and all that. There's especially at these ownership levels, 17.3% for the Johnston line, 13% for the Robertson line. I guess the Johnston line for me would be the only thing that I would really play, but for some reason I just have a weird, I just don't like this game. I really just don't. I hate to say it, I don't have a ton of interest in the Stars.
Yeah, I agree. The only line I'd have interest in is Johnson, Stankov, and Ben. But with Dadonov on the top line and Sam Steele on the second line, I have no faith that these lines are going to stick together. That's the other issue. It is back-to-back on the road for Chicago. But, again, I'd probably just go with, a Wyatt Johnston one-off here. I just, at some point, if this is a close game, I wouldn't be shocked to see Hintz, Robertson, Wyatt Johnston line in, the middle of the second period. So it's just where do you go confidently? And you just kind of go with you know Wyatt Johnston's going to play a lot of minutes. Yeah, it's going to be a chalky one-off, but it's not like he's 9,800. So it would probably be a Wyatt Johnston one-off for me. Colorado Avalanche, they 3.1 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 3.5 total. This is an interesting game. All I can think about is in the playoffs when Colorado, this iteration of the Colorado top line came into Winnipeg and just ran them out of the rink. They're 23,800, obviously the most expensive on the night. And yes, they're going to go up against Hellebuck. They have a 3.1 road total, which is the highest of the night of any team not playing the Sharks. I'm fine with Colorado one here. In single entry, if you include ownership and matchup and price, I think I'm going to go to Tampa. You're saving $2,000. You're facing a cardboard cutout in net. You know what I mean? So it's just like Colorado one is fine. And in the playoffs, they absolutely just ran this team over. But this isn't the playoffs. This is a very broken Avs team. The one thing that does worry me, their ownership isn't very high. And it's kind of like McDavid line in a tough matchup when he's rolling and they're like 4% projected. You know what I mean? This McKinnon line is 5.3% projected. That makes me nervous. The Winnipeg penalty kill isn't great. This line's fully correlated. So if you want to play Colorado one here tonight, I have no issues. There's some reasons not to play them, but mainly the reason would be one, Hellebuck in net. Two, you can get Tampa one in a much better matchup for $2,000 less. The Jet side is a bit more interesting. At home, Winnipeg is going to send out Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton against that McKinnon line. The McKinnon line plays so much that they're going to see some of everybody. But these middle six lines for Colorado and their goaltending are a bit rough. And the flow chart says if the Jets are in a bad matchup, you play them. This is technically a bad matchup. Colorado's a good team, and they're getting low ownership. Connor Scheifele Velarde does interest me. They're not great 5-on-5, but like going up against Middlestat, Kiviranta, O'Connor, or Kelly, Ivan, Kovalenko don't really scare me. I'm in on Winnipeg one here. They're fully correlated on the power play. You want to go to Winnipeg 2. Cliffy's mentioned that they have been creating a lot more. Again, ice time is the issue there. You do get Ehlers on the top power play unit. So I'm in on both top lines here. In single entry, I prefer Winnipeg just for the reasons I mentioned before, but I definitely think Colorado one is in play.
Yeah. I would never say don't play Colorado one. Doesn't matter the size of the slate or anything like that. Like they're going to play 22, 23 minutes. They're perfectly correlated. You know, going back to last season, 4.4 goals per 60 at 5-on-5. Like that's elite. Like that's, you know, the Panarin line territory. That's Dallas one when they're really rolling territory. That's Toronto one territory. Like, you know, elite. The problem is I worry about the power play for two reasons. One, it looks like Cale Makar is going to play tonight, but he did miss half of the last game and then coming back. It just makes me wonder, like, does he get knocked out early or anything like that? Like that's something that's gnawing in the back of my head. The other thing is the Jets don't take any penalties. They're at 2.2 times shorthanded per game this season. That's fourth fewest in the league. It's about a full penalty less per game than the league average. So, you know, if Colorado only gets like 2, maybe 3 power plays here tonight, that means they're going to have to be very efficient on the power play, which obviously they can be, but they have to be. And then they have to do a lot of damage at 5-on-5. And I think it's just a lot to ask. Like you mentioned with Tampa Bay at 21,800, I would probably rather just go play Tampa Bay here tonight. But I'll never say like don't play Colorado. Like they're playable in any matchup on any slate at any price, like anything like that. I agree with you. The Winnipeg side is the more interesting side. That Winnipeg top line is one of the lines that I do have interest in. Connor Scheifele Velarde, 7.6% top 2 stack, 2.4% ownership here tonight. Colorado doesn't take a ton of penalties, but they are taking a lot more than Winnipeg. The Winnipeg power play has generally been very good so far this season. They're shooting a little bit hot, a little over 20%. It's high, but it's not extreme. I think Ottawa 1 is at like 29, 30%. Like that's extreme. Like 20% plus is high, but not it's going to regress, but it's not going to be crazy regression. They are going to go up against the middle six of Colorado, and I agree with you. There aren't any matchups that I'm worried about there. You get to face the Colorado goaltending, which is always a bonus, especially because they're not going with Annunen tonight. They're going with Georgiev. Georgiev has an .822 save percentage so far this season. My God, the only goalie that might be worse this year is Tristan Jarry. He got sent to the AHL. So I do like Winnipeg 1 here. They are one of the lines that I'm targeting, that 19 to 21K range. I think you can go down to Winnipeg 2, Ehlers, Perfidi, and Mesnikov, mainly just because Ehlers does get power play time, but it's Winnipeg 1 that I think I have the most interest in.
Yeah. Vancouver Canucks with a 3 total heading into Los Angeles. The Kings have a 2.9 total. This is an interesting game. Alex Turcotte is out, and it's actually Kevin Fiala taking his spot on the top line with Kempe and Kopitar. Second line is Moore, Deneau, Akil Thomas. Third line of Laferriere, Byfield, and Fogle. Vancouver running JT Miller, Besser, DeBrusk, Patterson, Garland, Suter, Sherwood, Bluger, Heinen. So, in theory, I like Kopitar, Kempe, Fiala. The issue here for me is they're going to go out against Miller and Besser and probably that Hughes pairing.
I mean, it's not Fiala on the top line. It's Akil Thomas.
No, the beat writers, I saw that and they switched it. They said Thomas is skating with Deneau and Moore.
Oh, okay.
Hiller, what a time. But I like that line, but again, they're going to go out against Miller and Besser and that Hughes pairing. So at 19.4 in that price range, there's so many other lines I'd rather play. If they happen to get into your MME mix, high five. More Deneau, Akil Thomas kind of is a bummer because like Fiala Moore and Deneau is kind of interesting, but that's not the line. So I think for LA, the line I'd go to is Laferriere, Byfield, Fogle against the middle six of Vancouver. You're avoiding the Hughes pairing. Byfield, he's starting to shoot again, which is good. Fogel's been shooting. Laferriere's on the top power play unit. It's an awful power play matchup, but at 11.7, that line would be in the mix for me for filler lines. On the flip side, it would be Miller, Besser, DeBrusk. No one's playing them. 0.6% projected ownership. You get Besser and Miller on the top power play unit. This is a very good power play matchup. It would be the Miller-Besser line for me and the Kings' third line.
Honestly, I just really don't have a lot of interest in this game. I think you can make an argument these are 2 of the 5 best penalty-killing teams in the league. Los Angeles' entire problem is that they take far too many penalties. They're at 3.9 times shorthanded per game. That's led to 11 power play goals against them 14 games. Problem is the Canucks power play has just not been good. You know what I mean? Like that Canucks power play has struggled for most of the season. They have gotten their goals, but at 5-on-4, even since they moved DeBrusk off, they're at like 52 shots per 60, which is about average. They're at about 7.1 goals per 60, which is a little bit below average. It's just not a lot to go off of. If anything in this game, I guess Miller, Besser, DeBrusk, they have been pretty good this season. 19.6 high danger shots for. They do play a lot with Quinn Hughes. I was looking at JT Miller's minutes. Like 2/3 of his 5-on-5 ice time comes with Quinn Hughes on the ice with him. So that's one of the reasons why I would go Miller, Besser, DeBrusk. It's the only line that I have a little interest in this game. Honestly, these are 2 really good defensive teams with 2 really good penalty kills. As long as the Kings don't take like 7 penalties, I think they'll be fine. So I really just don't have a lot of interest here. And
like Kopitar, Kempe, Fiala, save that for a better matchup. this isn't the matchup.
Yeah,
Minnesota Wild with Minnesota Wild with a 3.6 heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.4. This is a pretty brutal matchup for the Sharks. The Wild have been a very good defensive team. You want to play a little bit of Granlund, Toffoli, Celebrini in MME. That is fine. Wenberg, Eklund, Zetterlund. I'll throw them in the basket of fillers that I would have in my MME portfolio. But other than that, I'm out on the Sharks in single entry. Jake Wallman's still out. This is injury related, so probably the last game was injury related. The coach was just kind of being a little bit of a dick. Minnesota side's a little bit more interesting, but my God, have they struggled offensively. So this is a really good power play matchup. But again, if you're going to power play stack them, in order of preference, it's Kaprizov, Boldy, Eriksson, Zuccarello, right? So the best power play stack in my mind would be Kaprizov, Boldy, Joe, Eriksson, Ek. That's so expensive that I'll just go play Tampa. You know what I mean? It's fine, especially if you're making 3, 5, 10, 20 lineups. You want a full stack Minnesota 1, 20,300? Sure. It's a great 5-on-5 matchup too. Again, I'd rather just go play Tampa. You want to go Boldy, Eriksson, Ek, Marcus Johansson, 17,200. I think that's viable. I just don't like stacking the Wild without Kaprizov. I think for me, if I do have Wild in my lineup, I'll have a Kaprizov one-off, a Boldy one-off, or some sort of power play stack. So, I don't love stacking this game at all.
I do like this game quite a bit from the Minnesota perspective. Here's why. One, Minnesota's top power play, while not elite, is above average. And the San Jose penalty kill, they are one of the teams taking amongst the most penalties in the league. Boston's at 5.5. San Jose's just behind them at 4.1 times shorthanded per game. It's just a lot of penalties. San Jose's given up 10 power play goals against in 14 games because of it. Kaprizov, Zuccarello, and Rossi at 4.3 goals per 60 so far this season. Riding hot at 14.5%, but this is a line that has shot high shooting, pretty high shooting percentages before. And Jake Wallman being out is a big deal. He is, and it's not even close, their best defenseman at both ends of the ice. Maybe Liljegren can pick up a little bit of the slack, but it's not Ferraro, it's not Cody Ceci, it's not Thrun or Jack Thompson or any of these guys.
It's not Cody Ceci? What do you mean?
So I think losing Wallman hurts the team a lot. Honestly, losing Wallman hurts this team more than losing any other skaters. I genuinely believe that. So I think it's a really good matchup for Minnesota 1. I'm not worried about it's a good power play matchup. I'm not worried about the 5-on-5 matchup whatsoever. I think it's a really good one. I agree with you. It would be nice to do a Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Eriksson X stack or something, but it is really expensive. I think I would just go Minnesota 1 here, Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi. They are one of my favorite lines on the slate. They are expensive at 20,300, but they are one of those lines in that 19 to 21K range that I have interest in playing here tonight. On the San Jose side, Granlund, Toffoli, Celebrini is playable, but they're getting towards 17K. And the Wild are, they let in 5 goals in that game against the Kings. Those things happen. The Wild are still one of the best defensive teams at 5-on-5. The penalty kill is bad, which is why I would have some interest in San Jose's top line because, this is one of those spots where San Jose could go 2 for 2 on the power play. But Minnesota is just not taking very many penalties this season. Second fewest penalties taken per game in the league and fewest of any team on the slate here tonight. So again, San Jose would have to be super efficient on the power play. I think they're more of an MME play for me. It's Minnesota 1 I like best in this game, and they are one of the lines that I'm considering here tonight.
Yeah, no, I do like Minnesota 1. I just don't like their configuration, I guess, with the price. So
yeah, I mean, beggars can't be choosers, I guess.
If Rossi, I wish Rossi was on the top power play unit, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Let's get to defensemen here. At the top of the board, we have Cale Makar, Roman Josi, Quinn Hughes, Victor Hedman, Noah Dobson, Jake Sanderson. Don't particularly love the top of the board here tonight. Like, Cale Makar is a game time decision. If he plays at 8,500, that worries me. At best, you could say he's going to be low owned. I guess Yossi's fine. Quinn Hughes not in the best matchup. I guess it'd be Noah Dobson and Jake Sanderson at the top. What are you thinking?
Yeah, Dobson for sure. I also have Victor Hedman. Like, again, with Fedotov in net. Yeah, like, this is pretty good matchup. Also, I do want to shout out Quinn Hughes. Like, he's still shooting. He's been probably the best defenseman in the NHL to start this season. And, you know, if the Kings penalty kill does let them down, if they do take like 5 penalties or whatever, because they do take a lot of penalties, you got to figure Hughes is going to get involved. But it's Dobson and Hedman mostly for me. In the mid-price range, I think Josh Morrissey and Miro Heiskanen stick out particularly. Mackenzie Weegar is getting under 5K. Not a terrible matchup against Boston. Thomas Harley, if you don't want to pay up for Heiskanen, I think Harley's fine. Brock Faber in a really good power play matchup against San Jose, I think is very much playable. Brent Burns is shooting the puck a fair bit this season, which is something he did for most of his career. Obviously, he's fallen off as he's gotten older, but Brent Burns fine at home against Pittsburgh. Also mentioned a few of the cheap guys like Scott Mayfield for the Islanders. Like, with all the injuries they've had, like Mayfield might end up playing quite a bit here tonight. He's under 3K. Artem Zub is back in the lineup for Ottawa, but because it's his first game back, he's still min price at 2,500, and he's probably I think he's going to play 21 minutes. Uvis Balinskis, our boy from Florida, the problem with him was that he wasn't getting a ton of ice time, but he's been around 18 minutes a game for a few games now for Florida. Add that with the top power play time for the Panthers. I think that was pretty good for 2,600. Emil Andre took over the top power play unit from Jamie Drysdale. Not particularly targeting him. I'd probably rather play Balinskis, but Emil Andre, 2,500. Also mentioned Wyatt Kaiser on the road against Dallas. He's been up to 18 minutes. Might have to block a lot of shots against Dallas here tonight. And if you live on Narrative Street, Jonathan Kovacevic at home against Montreal, his pairing with Jonas Siegenthaler has been really good. He's not playing a ton of minutes, but it's a really good matchup against the Habs. For defensemen a little bit more expensive, I'll mention Alex Vlasic from Chicago, Esa Lindell on the other side of that game. Brandon Carlo might have to block a lot of shots from Calgary here tonight. Calgary can generate some shots. Timothy Liljegren is fine. And Ryan McDonough as well from Tampa Bay. I really like the Bolts in that matchup at home against Philly.
Yep. Let's talk about some goalies, even though there is not a single person who wants to, but we have to. The top of the board, if I'm spending up, it would be for Markstrom or Igor Shesterkin. I think Jake Ottinger is fine, but at that price, you need a shutout. In the mid-range, I also think Vasilevsky is fine. In the mid-range, I'm probably going like Joel Hofer or maybe Kevin Lankinen. And if I'm spending down, it would be for Dustin Wolf.
Yeah, the two that really stuck out to me were Bobrovsky and Igor. Bobrovsky hasn't been great, but Nashville's honestly been even worse. So don't mind him here tonight. Igor, like, what can you say? Like, he's been the best goalie in the league. So I really do like Igor at home. I think Kochekhov's fine at home against Pittsburgh. I do worry you have a game like he just kind of had against the Flyers, though. That worries me a little bit. I'll mention Kevin Lankinen on the road against Los Angeles. Vancouver doesn't give up a ton of shots, but they don't give up a ton of high danger shots either. So I don't mind Lankinen on the road if you're looking for a little bit cheaper. Like, if you're going all the way down, I would probably go to Montembeault again, going into New Jersey. But I honestly think I like the New Jersey side a little bit more than I like playing Montembeault here tonight.
Yep. Agreed. Who are you looking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to the former Desert Dogs, the current hockey club, and Mr. Dylan Genther.
Going Jersey boy, Timmy Stützle.
Yeah, there we go.
We may be back tomorrow. Depends on the GPPs that DK puts out. My dogs will be here if you want to watch them for an hour. We will put out a tweet if we will or will not. We'll know by lock. I'm sure we'll put out a tweet either later tonight or tomorrow morning letting you know what our plan is. But thank you guys for tuning in. Bacon agrees. And good luck, everybody, tonight. And we'll possibly see you tomorrow, definitely on Saturday.
Good luck tonight, everyone.